Good afternoon. A cheap and cheerful purchase today from Glasgow on its very first day of being in level 2, which means alcohol indoors and having friends over and all that sort of thing. So I went shopping for garbage. Original PlayStation 1 controllers. I saw one of these in CEX a few weeks ago. These are annoying stickers. For like £3. And I haven't seen one in quite a while. And it's the sort of thing you forget existed, these controllers, because I don't really know how long they were around for before, I need to clean that off, before the DualShock came along. I definitely remember using them as a child, and you would occasionally still come across them back in the day of the original PlayStation, even after the DualShocks came out. But the DualShocks were pretty much ubiquitous. And I remember even at the time, even during the PlayStation 1's lifespan and sort of when it was current, these felt weird having come back to it from the DualShock. And these are, I think, smaller. You know, even proportionally, the faces of them feel a little smaller. They're obviously very thin because they haven't got the DualShocks kind of padding them out, and for that reason I suspect these sticks are shorter as well, because you couldn't have your hand right up to this deep in because the DualShock being in the way. So I suspect the sticks are shorter as well. Even feels less wide. I feel like my knuckles are hitting against one another. And these L2 and R2 are about half the size. They normally come out all the way down here. Everything about it is a lot smaller even than I suspected. They are pretty fun, pretty interesting. And you really don't see them that much. They're not. It feels wrong to say they're rare because they're not worth anything. I got these for £2 each, and the funny thing was, I say these, yeah, I got two, because they're cash converters. They're a bit cheaper than CX. They didn't have it in CX anyway. Now, I did try them. I did muck around with them just to see what kind of condition they felt. These buttons all feel good. The analog D-pad, this one feels okay. Like when you move it, you see the rest of it move, which is ordinary for the PlayStation, as I say, analog D-pad. I say analog D-pad, I think that's true. Maybe that was just on DualShock, and maybe I don't fully know what I mean by analog, but it feels okay. But on the other controller, oh no, I've got it the wrong way around. This is the one that okay, so that's good. That one feels better than I remembered it feeling, because I knew one was a bit dodgy. So that's the slightly dodgy one, but it's really not that bad. And this one, you can see the kind of the whole, it's as if the whole thing is on a common platform, and you can feel it, and you can sort of see that it all moves together. Yeah, this is a slightly better condition controller. So I just bought this one. I left the shop, and I've told the story once or twice about the fake Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, I think, for Game Boy on a grey cartridge that had a kind of sidebar that said Game Boy Color only, and just said game at the top. Oh, it's gone very orange. So strange. And I told them, oh, that's fake, by the way, just so you know. And then left the shop and had this awful feeling of I should have bought that. I mean, it didn't matter that I told them it was fake. I was just sort of trying to be helpful. And then I realised that was really interesting. Why the hell didn't I buy it? It wasn't very much money. I think it was like a couple quid or something. And I just had this awful feeling of why didn't I buy that? Why didn't I buy that? And I was walking down the road, ignoring the feeling. Every step I took, getting further away, when I knew I should just go back. I should just say, actually, you know what? I'm going to buy that. It's going very orange. It's very annoying. Anyway, I had the same feeling today of £2. Why don't you just buy both controllers, for God's sake? Then you can play some really early PS1 with a friend, and both kind of get this really weird retro experience. Because so I did. And the thing about this weird retro, this is almost a more inaccessible experience than something older, because if I have any memories if I have any memories of playing PlayStation 1 games on these controllers, they're unlikely to be games that I did not then subsequently play for even longer on a DualShock. So it's a little bit like the playing on an original PS1 versus PS2. I did so much playing of PS1 games on PS2 that there's very few that have a unique association with the grey console. I remember playing Final Fantasy VII on the PS1 at my grandparents'. I think there was a specific reason for that. I don't think I had a PlayStation at all at this time, and I borrowed the PS1 off of a friend. So this was probably even, in the PS2's day. In fact, it certainly was, because I only came to Final Fantasy, after Final Fantasy X. That was the first one I played. So anyway, so it was a coincidence that I played it at any point on a PlayStation, and not for the first time. So I don't know yet what games will be kind of enhanced by this experience. And by enhanced, I only mean I don't really know what games that when using these controllers I will have this, oh, this is what I played it on. There may be no games for which that is true, but there are kind of different eras in PS1 games such that certain games feel more ancient and kind of from an early part of gaming history than others. The difference between, there was this game Circuit Breakers that a friend of mine had that just felt very very primitive, and you compare that to something like one of the Final Fantasy 9 or something. I feel quite a different worldview almost, a philosophy guiding game development in terms of where games felt like they were, something like that. So from a design perspective as well, it's interesting because since the DualShock, the PlayStation controller, and arguably games controllers, generally speaking, have not changed. They absolutely standardized video game controllers to a large extent, with the exception of a lot of Nintendo controllers, which yet still take their basis, their kind of foundation, from the DualShock, arguably. Xbox was basically just a slightly altered version of this. Sorry, not this, the DualShock. GameCube, same story really. Two sticks, a D-pad, four face buttons, four shoulders, or shoulder buttons anyway. And yet, this that kind of preceded the DualShock is basically just an SNES controller with two shoulder buttons instead of one, and it's got sticks. But if you look at that, if you ignore the sticks, in fact, that's really weird. I'm looking at it on screen as I record. That's an SNES controller, and that's really weird. And this arguably kind of points to the fact that Nintendo and Sony, as quite a lot of people know, originally collaborated on what became the PlayStation. Kind of Sony Nintendo disc console. So, yeah, this controller, as a comparison to the DualShock, which feels like the real PS1 controller, they're quite rich in history, I think. Looking at it, so yeah, dirt cheap and fun to. It's quite quite thought provoking in a way. Yeah, that'll do. Cheers.